So, Gav, so just a brief outline for everybody listening. You would have got an email about children and phones. Gav, do you want to just go into a little bit about what the email there it said? Because I know there was a point in it saying that it amplifies what's already happening inside. Can you just talk us through a little bit
Yes.
of that?
So let's just try and get it all out here, right? So for the moment, so these aren't what we're going to do here is we're not going to give hacks, right? There's a load of space where you can go and find kind of rules and different kind of strategies around, how much time they can get and all that. But they're short term little pieces. We want to give you something that's kind of meaningful and long lasting. So what we're talking about is, look, phones provide challenge. Let's not beat around the bush. So it's not kind of positive psychology or anything like that. Let's go and understand that phones provide challenge. There's bullying happens on them. There's increased layers and dynamics, especially with the girls. Like we were talking about that today with some of the 6 class girls and 13-year-old girls. There's layered dynamics that are brought into kind of the social side of stuff. There's like massive comparison. So phones bring a lot of challenge into our day right now. And the best way to look at this from our point of view, is that the phones are now stress testing our inner world. Before a car goes out onto production, it needs to be stress tested to make sure that everything is correct right now. There's the way the world is progressing and evolving. We're getting stress tested a lot early, which is great, because we've all heard of like midlife crisis in their 40s and 50s and stuff. Now kids are having, we hear anxiety now much more early on. So we're getting stress tested a lot earlier on. So to understand that, does that make sense, Steve? First of all,
Just one of the anxiety thing. Is there any anxiety like that? Like I know I've been seeing it in school, but yourself, you can give examples of just the anxiety that that's causing people within the social media platform.
Say that again to me.
Is there can you give us an example of some of the anxieties that are coming from the social media platforms and things like that?
Yeah. So look, well, before we dive into that, I just want to I suppose, really frame it that the idea, what we're looking to do here is we're looking to use the phones as nearly like a mirror, because we said the phones are nearly mirror. They're showing us our inadequacies so early. They're like showing us where our little cracks in how our identities are created really early. And that's fantastic, because now we get an opportunity to deal with them. But the issue is that if we don't know how to deal with them, then we nearly avoid them. And it's like, get rid of the phones. They're showing the stress test, but that's like taking away the stress test of the car before it goes out onto manufacturing. But the real professionals, the real skill set kind of goes, okay, that's that crack there, right? We know how to do that. We know how to solve that, make them stronger, make them more adaptable, et cetera, et cetera. So I suppose what we're looking to do here is we're looking to teach the skills to allow us to help ourselves and our children adapt and build their inner world with a much more solid foundation. And that's the key thing. So the phones, it's not the phone's fault. It's not social media's fault. It's the phones are showing us our cracks, our little weaknesses, our little inadequacies. And that's fantastic, because it now gives us an opportunity to deal with them. And we can have fantastic growth, because now we can see them and we can work with them. And if you imagine we start building them at this age, their foundation becomes much wider, so they can grow much taller. As opposed if they're built on small foundations and suddenly they get to 40, 50, and then they're flapping over. So I suppose that's the frame, Steve, on that.
And you mentioned that the phone is a mirror, and it's kind of is it a mirror of the things that the kids don't have, the things that people don't have?
So I know what you mean. So let's try and make this really clear, right? It's an identity stress test. There's two types of, let's call it, identity stress test. The first one it's stressing is it's asking, who are you? Who am I? So if on the, let's just say, for example, they see someone on social media and they're kind of going, okay, so what's happening is, if I ask you, Steve, who are you?
Yeah.
What would your answer be?
It'd be a father, a principal, a husband, all these kind of traits. Things.
And you get that as you get a bit older, people kind of get a bit understanding. But when you're asking the kids now, who are you? They're actually finding it very difficult. They're they're not really, they can't answer that question because they're not rooted in their highest value. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to somebody who's heard the terminology highest value before, but I suppose just to make sure we've covered this in other videos and people can listen back and things like that as well. But just can you go a little bit more on highest value if you don't mind?
So in our highest value, is where we are most resilient. In our highest value, it's when we are most disciplined, reliable, and focused. Our highest value comes from our highest void. If we don't understand what our highest void is, our highest value, what we can do is we can inject someone else's priorities into us. So, like teachers, preachers, friends, hierarchy. So we can say, oh, that should be important to me. But here's the issue. If I inject Steve, let's just say I look at you and I say, oh, like I want to be like Steve, or let's say you're big into the gym and I wasn't. I'm like, and I try to live according to your highest value. In my lower values, let me rephrase, because your highest value is not meaningful to me intrinsically because it's not connected to my highest void. Now, stop me if I'm getting if I get out. But here's the key.
What do you mean by highest voice?
So as soon as from coming out of let's say the womb, we through our interactions with the world, we have perceptions of what's most meaningfully missing to us, and what's most meaningfully missing becomes what our brain seeks to fulfill. So our brain is directional. So our brain effectively switches on and comes into our prefrontal areas when it's doing something that it perceives as highly valuable to it, meaning it's fulfilling a valuable void. Now here's the key. And I want to tie this back to who am I? Okay. If I'm trying to live according to someone else's priorities, I will be hesitant, I will frustrate, and I will procrastinate. If I'm living according to my highest values, I will be disciplined, reliable, and focused.
Can you give a little example just about just even a kid or a teenager where they would show this kind of trait?
So let's just say, for example, they're comparing themselves to someone on Instagram who's big into the gym. Okay, so whoever's like an influencer in the gym, obviously they're one of their highest values, highest voids is to be massively physically fit because they see a lot of value in it. Maybe they were felt very weak when they were younger, and so it becomes now massively valuable. So they're spontaneously inspired to act to go to the gym. The challenges that they have, let's say lifting weights, they can embrace the influencer can embrace pains and pleasures in the pursuit of their purpose, which is to become physically fit and strong. But here's the key. If I import their highest value into me because I don't know, I've never been taught this, I don't know how to root myself in myself, and I try to live according to their life, my brain will not find their challenges meaningful. Now, what does that mean? If your brain does not see a challenge as meaningful, it will fall into its amygdala. And the amygdala wants to run away from pain and seek an immediate gratification of pleasure. So in the context that we're talking about here, if I'm a teenager and I'm trying to live according to someone else, I'm not going to be able to do it. That's going to create doubt in me because I see I'm not disciplined, I'm not reliable, I'm not focused. I will hesitate, I'll procrastinate and frustrate. So my achievement levels will go down. My self-confidence will go down because confidence means with, and fidence means trust. So I no longer trust myself to be able to achieve a goal because it's low on my value list. And that also then has a level of in terms of self-belief, because I no longer see that I have the skills to keep on going to achieve a goal. So this creates an instability in our identity because we're no longer certain we can do something. And this uncertainty is an amygdala reaction. It's basically the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And that creates the anxiety. So when we talk about an unstable identity, when a child and a teenager is not rooted in their highest value, their most meaningful void value, they will have instability in identity. Am I explaining that? Does that make sense to you?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. So linking that back then to the identity crisis the kids are going through when it comes to phones and the social media side of things. The question you asked there is who am I?
So one of the greatest defenses against, because we got a question there earlier on from the guys online here, was that phones are going to be with us for the rest of our lives, and our teenagers. They're going to be exposed to all sorts of content. And the greatest defense we can have is someone who's rooted in their highest value. Because when you're rooted in your highest value and you know who you are, so for example, my highest value is talking and teaching about human behavior principles, teaching and my children, talking to them and about this, like helping them develop using these principles. When I know who I am, I can embrace pains and pleasures in the pursuit of that purpose. I'm much more resilient to outside noise telling me I shouldn't be doing this, I should be doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but would you be less resilient in areas? Say, would you be less resilient in areas that you don't care about, that are in your lowest value?
So say that to me again. Give me an example of what you mean.
Like, would you be less? Are you saying that you're more resilient in the area that you care about most, I suppose, your highest
Yeah.
value?
Yeah.
Then that means you're less resilient in the areas if somebody was importing their stuff.
Absolutely, yes. So and that's where the comparison comes. So if I try to live according to someone else's values, if I try to import them, I will run away from that unmeaningful challenge. Where any challenge that I perceive in my area would be a meaningful challenge. And when we talk about, there's the Greek aphorism, know thyself, be thyself, love thyself. The first, like the most, in order to prevent against addictions, one of the most important things to prevent against living, I'm sure people have heard about a hedonistic lifestyle. A hedonistic lifestyle is where we seek immediate pleasure and avoid immediate pain. And that's the amygdala. If we're living according to someone else's and injected hierarchy value, we end up living in our amygdala, and we look for, it's like being in a job you don't like. Look at kids in school, when they're not inspired by what they want to do, they avoid the pain of the moment and they seek immediate gratification, distraction, etc., etc. So when they're engaged in something that's highly meaningful to them, they're rooted in their highest value, they're more resilient, and they're more resilient against any of the, let's call it the scrolling, the flicking, any of that kind of stuff that goes on. They're more resilient to any internal thing trying to disturb who they are, because they know who they are. This is who I am. But if they don't know who they are because they've injected someone else, they can't answer that question, who am I? It becomes very, very difficult for them. So their identity is unstable. They're not protected. And that's when they start kind of getting into those addictive behaviors and getting themselves following pleasures, drink, drug, etc., etc.
Yeah. So then the benefits of just the who am I, like, is that obviously that will solve the identity crisis, but what comes next after that? So
it doesn't solve the identity. So it stabilizes one part of the identity, because it's now, I know who I am now. I know what's important to me. I know what's fulfilling to me, because your highest value is whatever you're doing, it fulfills you most, fulfilling, and it's important. So you know exactly who you are. That gives you stability of direction. That's what I'm about. Okay. The next identity crisis, and this is where we kind of really dive into the examples here on the phones and stuff like that, is the comparison. So we've all heard I'm sure we've heard what is it? It's, what's the saying there? I have it written down here. Envy is ignorant and imitation is suicide. Envy is ignorant, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. So let's really understand that. So envy is ignorant. So what that means is this is the second thing that destabilizes the identity. If we see on social media, and this is how we use it, we can use this, and pull me back to Steve, how are we gonna use this in real life? So if you see something on social media, if someone posts on social media, oh, they're so this, they're so intelligent, they're so beautiful, they're so something. The envy, meaning ignorance, means missing information. Now, there's a universal principle. There's a principle here that everybody has every trait and displays it equally. Now, this is one of...
Sorry, go back on that for a second, because that can be confusing a bit. Are you saying that everybody has every kind of characteristic?
Everybody. So life is like a mirror. So the phone is like a mirror. Anything you see in others, and this is one of the most profound understandings you can have, but the process that goes with it is even more profound, because you see it. So this is where people go, geez, I don't buy that. That doesn't make sense to me. But wait, we show you how to do it. So
I was one of those guys when you said that to me.
Yeah.
I was like,
so the destabilization of identity happens when I see something. I see something in somebody else on social media, because it's in my face all day long, and I go, they have this trait, action or inaction. and it's so good, it's all good, that trade action. What I have is the opposite, and it's all bad. Anytime the brain perceives an all good, all bad, a fear or fantasy, it drops into its amygdala. And why does it do that? Because the amygdala is a predator avoiding, prey seeking survival brain. And it needs to activate lots of adrenaline. So it needs to basically polarize all goods, all bad, needed to kind of get adrenaline, all these different neurochemicals, so it can make it sprint away from the predator and sprint towards the prey. But the destabilize happens here. Imagine trying to do anything if you feel like you're being chased by a dinosaur. Your uncertainty. You don't know, can you trust the environment? You don't, like the thing that you see in others, you think, I don't have that. And that of seeking and avoiding mechanisms come. Am I making sense here, Steve? So you're looking, you resent that which you see in yourself and try to avoid yourself and try to impulsively seek that which you see in the others. And that creates the disability. Now, what we're saying about phones is the brilliant thing about it is the phones bring that to the forefront straight away. So you can isolate straight away. You can now, if you have the skill set, you can now start doing the inner work. Okay, what is it that you're seeing in that person that you don't see in yourself? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And stop me again, Steve, because I know, like we've talked about this so many times. I could be going too fast. And look, as I said, we can clarify after questions and stuff like that. But the skill set here, the real beauty about this is that, and what we can use the phones for, everything to become whole means to own the things that you see in others that you don't see in yourself. So how does that work? And this is where the highest value comes into alignment with this. So take, for example, I know, and you give another example if you want here, but they seem so intelligent or confident. Let's take intelligence. And we say, I don't have that. I'm not in that same degree of intelligence. Okay, so what do we do with this? Here's the skill set. Use the phone, brings it to the forefront. Okay, you don't think you have this. Okay, great. What is this that you're perceiving you don't have? Break the label. So beauty or intelligence, all of that is a collection of actions and inactions. I'm going to say that again. All of these labels are just the brain perceiving actions and inactions, grouping them together and going, that's what that is. So how we do this is this. If it's intelligence, we go, what is it that you're perceiving is intelligent? Okay, is it that they look like they're staying with a problem for a long time? That they're staying with the problem for a long time and finding a rest. Okay, so we break the thing down step by step and go, okay, where in your life do you stay with something for a long time until you find a resolution? Now, if we have the highest value, remember, we're disciplined, reliable, focused on our highest value. We're spontaneously inspired to act in our highest value. The leadership awakens in our highest value. We want to teach them. So then we look at their values and we go, okay, so where do you stay with stuff a long time? It could be computer games. It could be mastering Irish dancing. But we basically get to see where they express the actions and inactions which they admired in that person, where they display it in their own life. And then what happens, we call that owning the disowned. And this isn't this is not 2, 3, 4 times. This is 30, 40 times until the brain sees it and it can't unsee it. And it's like, I never thought I had that before. And then what we do is we take it off the pedestal of the person we saw them, because they may still have the fantasy in the version that they see it. So then we go, what would be the disadvantages to you and your highest value? Because remember, this highest value could be, remember the girl we were talking about who her highest value was mastering rhythm and Irish dancing. That's what was most inspiring to her. So if she was comparing herself to some Insta person, we go, what would be the disadvantages to you and your highest value, the thing that's most important to you, if you displayed it here? Well, you wouldn't have, you'd be sacrificing time there, and you'd literally break all that time. She goes, you know what? I don't want it. That I can see all the challenges. They're very unmeaningful for challenge to display in that particular area. I find these challenges much more meaningful. Does that make sense, Steve?
Yeah, so in relation to this self-awareness that people are getting when they're getting to, I suppose, the knowing themselves a bit more, they've asked the question that who am I, and they start to get to know themselves with this self-awareness. The kind of I suppose, given an analogy like the builder with the tools, I suppose. So how are they going to get? Yeah.
Yeah, so even just to tie it back into what we were saying there and hold me to this now, right? So when we said Emerson said envy is ignorance. So what we're saying is, and why do these guys understand this? Like they understand this stuff. So envy is ignorance. So all we're doing is we're fine. So we said ignorance is just missing information. So we're just bringing full awareness. You hear a lot about awareness, full awareness. We're bringing full awareness to the mind. So what we're doing is we're bringing the unconscious conscious, and then we're so that's full awareness. So just to touch on that now, to your example, another way of looking about this, it's like a builder with tools. So imagine there's a builder doing with tools, and he has his hammer and he has his drill. But let's say he doesn't have a drill, or let's say he sees somebody with a drill and he goes, oh my God, my life would be so much better if I had that drill. I don't have it. Am I making sense? So
Yeah.
what we're doing is we're actually we're bringing his awareness to show you actually do have that. You have all of the tools necessary to do that which you're observing. I don't know if I made that clear. Does that make sense?
No, it wasn't just not really. That wasn't clear, but I said,
It
oh,
wasn't clear. Tell me.
yeah. So it's the self awareness, and once you're kind of grounded in the area that you care about the most, this was the highest value. The comparisons and that kind of stuff won't happen as often, or they might happen. You might be aware of them, but they don't matter as much.
Okay, so what you're using the phone. Okay, sorry. Let me be clear. What you're using the phone to do is to isolate all of your disowned parts, all of the bits that you are not conscious to. You're using that, and then with the training that you understand, you're now going and you're owning all of these parts that you disowned before. And you're also balancing your perspectives on stuff. You're getting rid of all the all goods, all bads. So instead of having a fantasy about
Can I interrupt you there? Is our phones, just because the topic there now, and social media and things like that, are they all good or all bad?
Say that again to me.
Are phones all good or all bad?
Yeah, so just I know we touched on this a second ago. So another thing for parents to really grasp as well, because I know we've been fed a lot of stuff about phones are up. There's a lot of challenge to it, but here's something really interesting, I think, and it also helps to relax mom and dad, relax us. When you watch this, I've done this so many times. I actually did today. When you understand a child's highest value, take for a guy though, I was speaking to a guy today who's big into BMXing, okay? And I asked him, I go, when you're on your phone and you're on shorts, what is the content? What is the majority of the content you're consuming? And he was saying, oh, I'm consuming BMX stuff. And he was telling me all the stuff he's consuming. And I said, do your mom and dad know necessarily what you're kind of consuming? And he said, no, not really. They kind of, they don't really know what, as in they do, but they kind of get worried about what I'm consuming. But the thing is here, when you look at anybody's phone, their phone time will give you such an idea of what their highest value is, because they will want to import into them what's important to them. So even things that you think are irrelevant, they're actually relevant to their child's highest value. So another guy to me said, oh, I spend loads of time looking at Neymar doing different skills and stuff like this. And literally he goes, I look at that all the time. So my point is this: if we as parents can also go, when the child is on this stuff, they're more than likely consuming stuff that's related to their highest value or stuff that they find meaningful. And if we start engaging with them on that meaningful stuff and go, why you're looking at that for the sake of what? For the sake of what? And getting a real understanding of, geez, they're actually studying the thing that's most important to them. They're actually studying here. Like that today, Bloom, I had 3 guys in front of me and 3 girls in front of me. And it literally, when we talked about it, they actually went thinking, oh, geez, that's what I'm doing. I'm actually studying the thing that's most important to it. But mom and dad might be like, oh, they're on their phone for hours. They're scrolling. It's bad for their eyes. Absolutely. Everything has its support and challenge. But if mom and dad thinks that the phone is all bad, no good, or a lot of bad, no good, we fall into our amygdala and we'll try to avoid the phone and get them to doing something that's not the phone. And that will create tension, and that will create resentment between you know what I mean, mom and dad and a child. Whereas if we understand going, they're more than likely importing stuff that's massively valuable to them, and go, what are you learning here? And engage with them in that highest value. You see, it's actually quite their studying. Am I making sense?
That makes sense to me. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a lot of the points kind of covered there, Gav. So I'm going to So thanks a million for everyone for listening. Again, this will be on YouTube and Spotify as well. We got a bit of feedback that it's easier for people to listen to if they're on their walks and that kind of stuff. So Dave takes the audio and puts it onto Spotify. So I'll stop the recording now, and then we'll open up the Q&A. All right.